Lisa Crosby, welcome into the Copilot Studio. Good to be chatting with you again.
It's been a while, but yeah, it's great to be back.
It has. Now, for everybody watching and listening, now you're not going to need too much of an introduction, but for those that are watching and listening, give us a little bit of an insight into who Lisa Crosby is, what it is that you're doing, and what's keeping you busy.
Oh, look, the thing that I'm probably most known for these days is being a YouTuber, which is words that 3 years ago, if you'd said that's what would come out of my mouth, I would have said, no, I don't think so. So I work for a Microsoft partner called Barhead Solutions. I do pre-sales, evangelism, all sorts of, helping customers understand what's what. And a big part of that is keeping up with the newest things, all of the Copilot stuff. I do the YouTube thing as my community, kind of can't get enough, can't stop on the weekend. So I do content on YouTube that helps people keep up with the latest features and tutorials on all of the things. My thing is really about helping non-technical people learn the tools and be able to get the most out of them. And then I travel around to speak at conferences, which is something I love doing. And that's about it. That's me. So I'm a technical communicator, I guess you could, if I'm going to sum it up in a short couple of words.
Yeah, look, I mean, your YouTube channel's gone berserk. I mean, how many subscribers and things like that have you got now?
It's nudging 60,000 right now. By the time this is out, it might be 60,000, which is honestly, crazy. When I first started doing it properly at the start of 2021, my audacious goal was, could I get to 2,000 subscribers? And right. I thought that was really out of anything that would be possible. So to actually be sitting here and saying I'm close to 60,000 and that the idea that 100,000 is actually now a realistic goal is staggering to me. It's very delightful, but it's staggering.
No, you're doing, obviously the way that you present and the way that you communicate and relate that sort of, non-techie type of stuff into tech and all that type of way that you do communicate, what you're doing, I think has a huge impact in that type of thing too. So, you're doing some amazing stuff. Now that has obviously, made you a global superstar, and apparently so. And you've been, recently. Tell me a bit about what you've been doing recently. It seems like you've been gallivanting all over the globe, presenting at conferences and across Europe and everything like that, and looking like you're having an amazing time.
I had 3 weeks off my day job and away from my family, which was a very interesting experience. So I had 3 weeks in Europe doing conferences I did Dynamics Minds conference in Slovenia. I went and spoke at the Resco Next event, which is an ISV, and they have customers come along, and then the European Power Platform conference in Belgium. So they were 3 very different conference experiences. And I know that's only 3 countries, but along the way there, I went to 5 countries that I've never been to before. I wasn't much of an adventurer traveler when I was young. So suddenly now sitting in front of a camera and talking about technology has enabled me to go to Europe and see places I've never seen before. Had the absolute time of my life.
So obviously, I mean, Copilot is the flavor of the month, as we all know, and you're doing a lot of really exciting stuff in that space as well. So just tell me, just a helicopter view about, I guess, what you're doing in that space. Are you doing, M365 Copilot? We've got Copilot Studio. We've got different flavors. So what's keeping you busy in that space right now?
Bit of both, actually. So the YouTube content, I'm doing both Copilot Studio and Microsoft 365 Copilot. I come from a Power Platform business applications background. So Copilot Studio evolved out of what was Power Virtual Agents. My tutorial on Power Virtual Agents was one of the very first things I ever did on YouTube that was successful. So there's a bit of an origin story. I was very much on to Power Virtual Agents when it was first out. And then that product for a while it was great. And then just sort of steadied along. And then all of a sudden it turned into Copilot Studio and had all these other things added. So that's an exciting space. So I work with that for my content, and we've got active projects at Barhead that I'm working on at the moment as well. And then the Copilot for Microsoft 365, that one, when they did the big launch announcement of that, which was March 23, where they did the big launch event, and I sat and watched it, and I actually had to step away from the computer. Like the overwhelm of like, what is going on? How much of a change is this was incredible. And the video I did about that, I was actually very honest. That was the first time I'd done something that was much more, they talk about breaking the fourth wall, when you do this content. So I was actually, because I didn't know, I've been doing a lot of content that's like, let me break down these announcements for you quickly. What's the top 10? What do you need to know? And I enjoy doing that. And a lot of people tell me they enjoy watching it. I read this one, I watched this one, there's no way that I can do that. So that video actually starts with, I'm feeling the overwhelm. This is how I'm feeling about it. It was a much longer video, and that video just went absolutely wild. Like people loved, and that actually changed a bit about how I approach this. But since then, I've been following along, and it's only since the Copilot for Microsoft 365 was available outside of enterprise. I don't work for an enterprise organization. So it's only since January this year that I could get my hands on it, along with many other people. And now I'm in it every day. I'm talking to customers about it every day. I'm using it myself and learning new things the whole time. So it's been a very quick, I was across all the theory of it for a long time and then bang straight into it. And a lot of customers are just, I probably where all of us were, you're excited about it, but what do we do with it? Where's the value in it? So
where's the value? We'll touch on two topics, but let's just start with you first. And where are you seeing the value in it personally in your sort of day-to-day working and operations?
Yeah, I'm actually finding the ability to help rewrite and repurpose things that I've already done before. So, a lot of people are, the idea of going into Word and saying, please write me a document on this, or please create a document based on that is good. But where I've had things that are, for instance, something that's, if you're writing a proposal, so I work in pre-sales and, you need to write a proposal about something, and there are elements of the proposal that really need your brain power to think about what you know and how you want to express something, and other parts where you just have to tick boxes and you have to answer questions and do things. And so being able to say, well, here's something I've done before and repurpose it into something like this, or find our reference document about this and reword it with this angle on it, because those things have to be done, but they don't need hours of human time spent on them. So it's a really nice uplift to be able to say, well, which things can this kind of augment what I can do, not replace what I can do, but just take away some of those tasks that are less valuable for my time and less fun to do. So I'm finding, I don't like the sort of just, write me this thing from scratch. I am enjoying the sort of help me write a to-do list, find these things for me as well, because I have a mess of stuff. We all have a mess of stuff. I can never find that slide in that deck I did sometime 3 years ago. So as well.
I reckon I use that prompt every single day. I mean, you would probably work in a similar way where you're collaborating with a lot of people. You get, you share documents around all the time. I know, Lisa, you shared this document with me a week ago. I know we've been working on it, but where is it? And now I use this prompt. It saves me a stack of time. Can you find me that document that Lisa shared with me about X, Y, Z? And just give me the details. And rather than having to search through emails, sharing links, and all that sort of stuff.
I had one actually that was really good where I actually went a level deeper, where it was like, I know I've got screenshots of some reports, and I use that a lot because it's a piece that, like, the screenshots are really good and it's hard to show something live. And it had been a while for this particular product, and I was like, what did I call that deck? Where did I put it? And the prompt was something like, help me find the deck about this product where I mention reporting. And because I had a nice header slide in the slide deck called reporting, I actually found it. And I was like, that was good. That would have taken me a while to find it. I mean, I could be more organized, but doing a million things at once and you lose track of where you put things sometimes.
So you mentioned using it for, referencing other content that you've done before. In that scenario, is it more that you've got like a document that is, full of references, or it's, going out and finding automatically sort of these other, depending on the prompt that you create, Copilot will find that sort of information, or you actually specifically reference a particular document that's got the content that is in there?
A bit of both. So far, more of finding specific content in a document and repurposing it more than I've had to play around with. The one that I most want to work is the one where you say, here's my Word document, turn it into a PowerPoint presentation. I love that feature. So far, though, I'm loving the content that it produces out of that. I'm really impressed with what that does. But I'm working with our marketing team on what does our PowerPoint template need to look like in order for it to work into the format that it needs to go in, and there's some documentation around that. And I think for a lot of organizations, it's like, well, there's that feature, but you want it in your corporate branded template. So that's a work in progress, actually. So I'll be very excited once we get that working as well, because the corporate template doesn't have the required, like it wasn't built with that in mind. So that's a bit of a shift as well, to say, well, hey, there's a huge uplift here if we do that. But yeah, I'm mostly finding something very specific, like where find the content on this and then reword it based on the way that we need to repurpose it. So that's probably the biggest one so far for me.
And what about with your dealings with customers? We seem to be probably, I mean, it's actually a reality now that, people are starting to use and implement Copilot, where probably, maybe 12 months ago it was kind of, if maybe we might use it, but it is becoming reality for many. How are you seeing the customer or the client uptake and the improvements that they're starting to see in their productivity?
Yeah, I'm still talking to a lot of people who are at we need to figure out the underlying security and the value of the thing. So there's still, I think a lot of the enterprise organizations probably a lot further ahead. The mid-sized businesses and organizations that didn't have the 300 seats sort of piece last year are still catching up with that, where, that's only been available in the last 6 months. There's still a lot of conversations out there around, most organizations tend to start with, we've got a pilot group of people and we want to help, like, let's work through scenarios and how can we get the best value out of it for us. There's also a lot of people who are very scared around the security, obviously, and you'd see this too, right? What happens when we switch this on? Suddenly everyone's going to be able to find everything. And the organizations that have done the good work already with their arrangement of the storage and the documents and things are in a pretty good place. But there's a lot of that fear, I think, and some of it founded and some of it unfounded around, well, those stories that everyone tells, what does my CEO earn? And let's find information I shouldn't find. And the reality of, well, people could already always find that if they tried a little bit. These are interesting conversations to have with people. You'd be having the same. You'd be having the same conversations all the time, right?
We spoke in a previous conversation about this thing that we used to call Delve, and that sort of
I like Delve.
Had
Delve
its own had its own fear factor about it, because people with elevated permissions would go to Delve and would see a lot of things, and they would see, is that going to be everybody's experience? I can see these pay slips and these employee records and things like that, but the same thing's happening, I find, with Copilot. But yes, you're right. Jump up to that search box up the top there and search for the same thing, and then see what you can find. Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah, one of my friends in the UK community, Chris Huntingford, when I was doing these conferences, he was talking a lot about this, and he would say to people, go to that search bar in Microsoft 365 and type the word password and see what comes back. You will be shocked.
Now, what about in terms of Copilot Studio? So tell me a little bit about, and for everybody listening, what's Copilot Studio at a helicopter level?
Yeah, Copilot Studio is actually the most exciting space for me right now. I think that's it's a sort of come out of the area that I'm in. So Copilot Studio does a number of different things. So two things you can do with it. One of them is to create a Copilot. So we used to call this a chatbot, but we call them Copilots now. So Copilot can be anything from, the experience you go to a website and you ask questions and it gives you answers and helps you out. That's now a Copilot rather than a chatbot in this language. It can also be something that's in... Oh, Siri is trying to participate. My AI watch is trying to help me out with that question. So you can do something that's that, very sort of familiar experience of being on a website where you're answering those questions. It can be something internal. So all of those experiences that we used to call chatbots are now Copilots, but you can do so much more than you used to be able to. I'll come back to that. And then the second thing you can do is use it to extend the first-party Copilot. So you can take that Copilot from Microsoft 365 that we've been talking about and extend it so that now it's connected to some other business system or some other knowledge source or something else in there. So not just the productivity applications, but extending it and plugging it into other things so that it can take action for you or do things for you. So the Copilot piece where you're actually building either these extensions or custom Copilots changes a lot from the idea of like what used to be a chatbot. You would go in and go, here's my topic flow. Here's the conversational flow. If someone asks this, then go here, then do that. That's what Power Virtual Agents did. Now what we can do is ground it in knowledge. And this is actually where I'm having a lot of kind of conversations with customers about this. How do we use this technology to help you find exactly the same stuff we're just talking about, right? But not just in the productivity applications. How do we help you find all and not, every organization has got all this knowledge. How do we use this to make that easier for someone to just ask a question and find the thing that they want across all sorts of circumstances? So you can have a Copilot now that is grounded in, pointed to, and able to answer questions from your website, from your SharePoint documents, from Dataverse. So all this is back into the world that I work in with the CRM, and a bunch of other things as well that are coming there to connect to third-party systems. So it becomes a very interesting and clever mix of both orchestrating a conversation to say, here's where the conversational paths need to go, but here are knowledge sources that the Copilot can draw on to answer them, and you can chop and change back and forth between them. It's moving so fast, and you turn your back for 5 minutes and there's another new feature enabled. So it's a really interesting space to work with at the moment.
You can still do that conversational orchestration right in Copilot Studio, where you can have your topics, and if somebody asked a particular question, you could take them down a certain path. Are you finding how are you finding the balance between organizations, with generative AI answers and things versus is there still a need? And I'm going to preempt and say there probably is still a need to orchestrate that type of conversation.
There absolutely is. And this is where it's different from something like other tools that just do generative AI, or if you go into Azure AI and you're really focused on the language models and it's all a generative AI solution. Copilot Studio allows you to do both of those things. And to be honest, even if you start talking through a use case that seems like, oh, it's only generative AI, pointed at our SharePoint, like classic cases, we've got all of our HR policy documents or IT service desk documents pointed at that. Okay, great. Oh, but if someone asks about this, then we want it to give this answer. Right. That's, and as soon as you dig beneath the surface, it's almost always both. It's very, certainly in the cases that I'm coming across, it's very rare that only generative AI would be the full solution. So you can, if you're starting in Copilot Studio, you're starting in a place where you've got both. And then if you want to go deeper into the generative AI with the Azure tools that are more sophisticated, you can absolutely go there and bring it back. But that Copilot Studio layer means you can have those conversational paths and conversational orchestration that you're controlling, as well as generative AI, and go as deep as you like. Whereas if you start with a product or a solution that's wholly generative AI, then you're missing that part. So I think that's partly why it's such a cool thing to work with, because it does both, and then you can extend as deep as you want into the stuff.
I think
more hours in the day, I would be learning more and more and more.
But I think that's where the power is going to be moving forward. I mean, being able to connect into those, those other data sources is going to be extremely powerful. And once organisations see the capabilities and some real world examples coming out of how people are doing that, I think it's going to be
and that's the huge opportunity there, because every organisation has a stack of knowledge that's hard to get to. And look, it's not a silver bullet either. I think the other thing, I think what happens is, we start to hope or believe that AI is just going to be, oh, well, this is the magic answer to everything.
Put it in and we're done.
And I've had conversations with the Microsoft guys about this, where, if you've got 40,000 documents in your SharePoint and you've got 6 versions of everything, the generative AI, and that's not a Microsoft problem, that generative AI can't solve that problem. So you need to have something in there that's more like a content publishing flow of some kind, and be pointing this, grounding it in a set of documents that has been properly thought through and published. If you point it to a mess, you're going to get inconsistent and wrong answers. So it's interesting, because what happens is I think the hype and the expectation gets oh, great, I can point it at my mess and it will solve all my
solve
problems. No,
everything
actually,
for
it
you.
won't.
Yeah. No, but I mean that's what I've seen, and a typical example you mentioned is around HR policies and things like that. But not everybody is very well structured in the way that they manage their documents inside
Yeah.
a SharePoint. But having the flexibility and capability and granularity even to take take a question or a conversation and direct it to the right place does have a big, even in those common simple examples, does have a huge impact on user experience and obviously data integrity and everything like that. So it's going to be. We're only obviously scratching the surface now, and you're doing a lot of stuff in there.
And it changes, like even the language model underneath. So I believe at the time we're recording this is still GPT 3.5 Turbo underneath Copilot Studio, but they are going to move to the next language model, and the difference in performance of 4 and 4.0 coming through is substantial. But they're always sort of engineering to get the best outcome for the best value underneath. So it's really interesting and even with the Copilot from Microsoft 365, and I work with Copilot for Sales as well with the Dynamics area. Just because you get a bad result one day doesn't mean you'll get the same bad result the next day. Like, it's actually improving and moving so quickly. And sometimes I'll come back 2 weeks later and go, wow, look, that's working much better than it was. And this is a very different way of working than anything I've been involved in before. Like, stuff kind of goes, this AI stuff is out there and people are using it, and then it's improving and changing. And I think that's the nature of it, and getting used to working with that and helping customers understand that that's the nature of it is an interesting challenge of working in this space right now.
I think for making it a habit to actually use it, or finding or just changing the way that you're thinking about how you're doing a particular thing, helps as well. How important do you think having those use cases, especially for M365 Copilot, I think is really important, around, you might use a Copilot experience differently to me, or if, you're in pre-sale, so so am I, but, using, writing proposals the way that you want to write it, as opposed to the way that I want to write it, we might have different ways of using it. So I think, and I've seen it and I've heard and spoken to a lot of people where it's kind of like a bell curve where Copilot's been put in, massive ramp up in usage, and then all of a sudden, is that all it can do? Just recap meetings and give me summarize a transcript? Well, no, not really. Tell me a little bit about how you work and what you do, and then let's try and work out that experience.
Yeah, I think there are those hero scenarios that everyone talks about, and certainly the meeting recap is the one that everyone talks about. I've found, I think when you talk to people at Microsoft about the meeting recap, I think if you have a really well-structured meeting with an agenda and outcomes and things, you're going to get a certain result. If it's a meeting that's much more sort of free-form discussion, the results are quite different. That's an interesting thing. I've sometimes taken the transcript and then worked with it in a different way to ask questions where the summary isn't as well structured. On the sales side, if it's flagged as a sales meeting and you're feeding it into Sales Copilot, you get a different response as well. But there's a piece there of, I think that's the hero piece, and then the piece where you can go in and just sort of ask it to help you find a document. But you're right. I think a lot of people go in and stare at the blank box and try one thing and then go, oh, well, that was a bit rubbish.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
and there's a whole lot of things in, and I'm getting more and more into, I think prompting is the skill now. And this is an evolving skill set too for all of us, even those working closely in the space, I'm still learning new things where you can go along and one of my favorite ones at the moment is this flipped interaction pattern where you actually ask the Copilot to ask you questions. So this is a brainstorming type of concept. I'm trying to solve this problem. Could you please challenge my assumptions or ask me questions to help me work through a solution? That's a very different way of thinking and a very different concept than please write me a paragraph about XYZ or please find this document. So I think there are some good use cases that people start with, but there's so much more to it that where people don't know what they don't know. So I get very excited about the potential for helping people discover the new things in this that they don't know yet that they can even do.
Yeah. So how does, I mean, I'm not a Dynamics person or a salesperson, but how does, what's the benefit of Copilot or Copilot for Sales? Is it sales?
Yeah. Yeah. So the core concept there is that you are bringing your CRM in as part of the data that Copilot can work with. So there's a couple of different experiences. There's one that comes with Dynamics, right? If you don't have the Copilot for Microsoft 365 license, which basically brings some basic AI things into the Dynamics tool and into Outlook. So it'll help you with summarizing your emails and summarizing opportunities and what's new with my accounts. A lot of natural language questioning. Show me my pipeline. What's my biggest account? So you can start to ask questions in natural language in the interface. If you combine it with the Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is the full Copilot for Sales offering, and I've just announced a new roadmap this week, that's where most of the investment is going, obviously. Things like you can go into Word and say, help me write a preparation document for this sales meeting, and it will actually kind of find, or a summary document for the sales meeting. And then it's bringing in, what are my opportunities? What are the tasks related to the opportunity? So it's a very sort of sales focused template. And the thing in the new release that's just announced that I'm really excited about is bringing OneNote in. I think OneNote is possibly underrated a bit in the stack. I use it all the time because I'm across all these different customers. I'm taking note. I've got really good notes and I can go and find stuff. But what happens is that's disconnected from your CRM, and there's never really been a good story of, you put short form notes in a CRM, but if I'm writing a lot of notes, that always exists in a bit of a different way. So that idea of now being able to go in and say, summarize and save to CRM is the feature. So there's a whole bunch of things there that are blending the productivity tools and the CRM information into a single experience. So there's a lot coming there, but that's an area that's really interesting as well. It kind of breaks down the concept of what CRM really is.
So that notes, you're saying that notes that's the Copilot experience inside of OneNote that
will be. That's just been announced is on the roadmap coming later this year. Yeah. So at the moment with Copilot for Microsoft 365 in OneNote, you can go in and say, summarize this. But the next part is then summarize and
doing something
in relation to my CRM. So you start to bring the CRM in as part of that as well. So when they do the new release announcements, it's always like one line with 4 bullet points, but it's like OneNote and Copilot and CRM. I'm like, that's a space that needs to be connected because a lot of people in sales put lengthy notes in OneNote. And I've had this conversation with a lot of customers, like, what do we do with that? You can start to blend them into Teams channels and things, but there's never really been a great story there. So that's going to be an interesting space to watch.
Yeah, it's moving. I mean, obviously, the roadmap, the last time at the last user group, I think I had, there was around about 90 odd things in development. So it's moving.
It's really hard to keep up with it all. And now I'm across the Microsoft 365 Copilot and Copilot Studio and sales. It's like, at some point my head will explode.
So what's the percentage? Are you doing more Power Platform stuff? Are you doing more?
I'm still mostly Power Platform, but Copilot Studio is actually becoming the main piece for me. And I think that's where there's a nice blend because the Copilot Studio and the Microsoft 365 Copilot and the Sales Copilot. So that's the world that is increasingly where I'm going. And those things then do have more useful crossover than trying to do Power Apps and Microsoft 365 where there's less of a crossover. So I'm trying to collate things into an area where I can get some expertise around that rather than trying to, you have to sort of realign every now and again. It's like, okay, my existing areas have now become too many and too broad. How can I find the value in these things that have something in common? So Copilot Studio is probably the unifying piece across all of that.
And the customers that you speak to, are you finding that I guess people are becoming overwhelmed with what the scale of what can be done?
I mean, I think I feel the overwhelm. I think most customers possibly don't even know that there is overwhelm. I think there's a lot of some are very switched on to knowing that these things exist, and the conversation starts with, oh, we want to use Copilot Studio. What can we do with it? Which is really interesting. That sort of thing didn't. I mean, I guess it happened a bit with Power Apps as well. We've heard about this. What can we do? Others are, there's quite a few people who've tried something. Like people have gotten in and had a go with it, and then hit a point where you need people who specialize, which is always the way with these tools. Others are really like, we should do something with AI. You know, I can't even imagine now being in a job where you're not doing a technical thing and trying to keep up with this. Like it's too much for me, and it's my job and my passion project on the weekend, and I can't keep up with it. Yeah. So I can't even imagine. So yeah, I think that thing of giving people guidance on that is a really interesting space for people like me.
I mean, people realise that they probably should be doing something in the space, you know, competitive advantage, all that sort of stuff, but you really don't know where to start. And I think,
exactly.
You know, there's this, as we were speaking about before, really trying to understand how, you know, businesses operate, how we can sort of take that repetitive thing, you know, human start, human end, but there's a lot of stuff in between, like you're referencing stuff that, you know, just doesn't need to take your time, that can be augmented with this type of stuff too.
Yeah, but it requires that sort of stepping back and thinking about it and remembering to do it a different way. Yeah. Because we're all inclined to, and even I'm doing it sometimes, I go, hang on, could I use Copilot for that? What would that look like? And now there's a barrier for me to figure that out, and it's going to take me longer to do that task. But if I get it, then I've got it. Yeah. So that change is hard.
Yeah, that's right.
It
is. Hey, now we're teaming up.
We are. I'm excited.
In a couple, the time of this recording, in a couple of weeks, we're presenting together on stage at the Digital Workplace Conference in Sydney.
Yeah.
Now, what are people going to get when they come to our session? Because, of course, it's going to be the best session of the conference.
It's definitely going to be the best session.
So, for people that are coming, what are they going to get, you reckon?
I reckon they're going to get a lot of information and a lot of enthusiasm between the two of us, because, you know, what you can talk to your part of this, but because you and I come from different experiences with this, like I've got a lot of stuff around how this works to help sellers and, you know, customer service and knowledge and all those kinds of things. You're coming at it from some of the other parts of the Microsoft 365 platform that I don't use. So I'm going to learn from you as well as everyone else. We've got this idea of focusing in on the scenarios, though, is where we're at. Like that idea of like, let's walk through a use case or a couple of different use cases and see how all of these pieces come together. Why don't you say what you're going to do?
I mean, that's right. And having use cases, having sort of end-to-end workflows and sort of showing how, you know, you can augment your workflow processes with Copilot. We think is going to be, you know, a really beneficial type of experience in a conference type setting. So it's not going to be your, I'll get in trouble, but fluffy Microsoft marketing stuff. It'll be nitty gritty, hands on things that can be adapted and changed and, you know, taken straight away and starting to be implemented. So it's going to be fun. It'll be good. It'll be good. Yeah,
it's my first time for that conference too, so that's going to be fun. I've done all these things all over the place, but haven't done as many local ones. So I'm excited to do something on. I mean, Melbourne's my hometown, like you, but Sydney's pretty close to home turf. Rather than having to contend with jet lag before I present, will be a nice change.
So I'll put all the details of the conference will be in the show notes as well. I'll get this out before the conference so everybody can jump on there and register and come and chat and say hello, and we'll be around and everything like that too. Now, before we wrap things up, where can people find you? What's the best channels? I'm going to probably say YouTube, but there's lots of other places where you hang out. So where can people find you?
The YouTube is the best place to find me. I prioritize trying to answer as many questions as I can that come up on the videos there, just because I want to try to help as many people as I can, and a public question and a public answer reaches a whole lot of people. LinkedIn is my second biggest platform, so feel free to connect with me there. But I struggle to get to every single message that I get on LinkedIn. I do my best, but I can't. There's only so many hours in the day. So YouTube first and LinkedIn second would be my main ones.
Surely you've got Copilot some way to be able to answer you all of this sort of stuff.
I do need to look into that. Yes.
Very good. All right, Lisa Crosby, thanks for coming in, jumping on, having another chat. It was good. Thanks again.
Thanks, Daniel.